Hello everyone, welcome to the Deeply Renegade podcast. My name is Molly, also known as the Deeply Renegade. I'd like to welcome you guys to episode 108. Today is Sunday, November 1st, and I'm really glad you can join me today. We'll see how long this episode is this week. I had, knitting indecision. So, what was it? So, there's going to be a lot of spinning content this week because I had knitting indecision. So, I just got back from the grocery store and I ended up picking up some, what was it? So there's this one ridiculous grocery store, which has pretty much any sort of ingredient you'd want. And they have, locally roasted coffee, and so I got my Mexican vanilla. Oh, it's so good. But as I was leaving the coffee aisle, I noticed that they had Kona, so I got some of the Kona from the same roaster, and yay! So super duper excited about that because what is it? Because that's the sort of grocery store it is. It has Kona coffee. So happy. And for some reason I never noticed it before, but there's so many different things in this stupid grocery store. What is it? The Dear Sweet Lovable one really, really hates it because it's a maze. But I really like it because it is a maze. So you go buy everything. So I think that's really cool. And I think I had everything on my list, so yeah. It was primarily to get coffee for the trip, so. It's cold, wet, and rainy today, so sort of gross, but not too cold because I'm wearing a t-shirt, so take that with a grain of salt. Alright, so the thing that's probably gotten the most love and the most indecision this week is my Alfaba sweater. This is for the Redemption knit-along. I'm knitting it out of Wool My Sapir in the blue curacao colorway, and I am working on a sleeve. So I was trying to decide whether or not I wanted to start alternating skeins the moment I joined in the round. And then I looked at how much was left of my skein and looked and saw how much was effectively trying to figure out which skein would be the closest to start alternating with, and I'm like, crap. So I ended up deciding to alternate for maybe 1 or 2 inches, to get the sleeve started. I still have plenty left of the this bodice ball. And then I just started to knit away with the one sleeve, or with the yarn that was last used for sleeves on the sweater. So, what is it? Coming along. I am decreasing away still. Hopefully it doesn't get to the length before I'm done decreasing. I needed to get to a multiple of 10, so that was taking its time. But I think it blended in really nicely. The Dear Sweet Lovable one could point to the spot where I stopped alternating, or point to the spots where I started alternating skeins and stopped alternating skeins. But he's a little creepy about that when it comes to the details, so he said it looked good, so I'm going to go with it. So then after I finish this sleeve, and I have some lacy bits to do on this, then I will move on to this sleeve, alternate for however long I alternated on this one, and then go to town on it. And that way I'll have all of the sleeves done, and then I can start, using the remainder and some other ball of yarn to start alternating once I get into it again. And I'll probably alternate skeins for the rest of the sweater. So that is the story there. It ended up sitting in my bag doing nothing until Wednesday or something like that, just because I couldn't decide what it was I really wanted to do. Most of the sleeve was knit between Friday and Saturday, so I came into some nice boring knitting time on Saturday, so that worked out great. So, what is it? And this is a Mary Annarella pattern, and I am knitting it on 3s. And using pretty much most of my cables on this right now. Oh, crazy Maggie. No, I was really bummed. One of my Xiaogu lace stalks for my interchangeable set ended up breaking. Like the steel sheared through, basically at where the little, what is it? Basically at where the cable came into the ferrule, so the little metal part on the end that you would screw into. So I need to email the Etsy seller I bought the cable from and see whether or not she'll do a refund or something like that, or just order another one. I wanted to get to the local yarn store yesterday in order to see if they would replace it, if they were just gonna honor like Xiaogu replacement, but I was really surprised that it had died there, because like this is a plastic coated steel cable and it sheared off the steel. This just totally blows the mind of an engineer. That's all I have to say. So I was really bummed about that, but I still love my Xiaogu needles. Like the only thing I can think of is like manufacturing defect. Like if somehow like it got cut into and then there was like a stress concentration. I don't know. It just seems really bizarre that it would break there. So I'll have to deal with that at some point, because pretty much my only knitting needles are Xiaogu at this point. The other thing, which ended up getting some love while I was being indecisive about the sweater, is the Jack socks. I still don't have pictures on Ravelry of this. I should probably take a photo or two. So this is out of Diabolical in the I Love Rock and Roll colorway. And I finally got into the pattern, but there wasn't a whole lot of knitting done on this week. So I'm into the pattern now. I finished doing the cuff, and here is the first sock. So it's coming along. Oh wait, if you want to see. So still quite a lot of sock left to knit here. We'll see what ends up happening on. I sort of want to cruise on the sweater for a bit, so it may be a typical Dear Sea Level 1 project problem where he doesn't get a lot of love. But, what is it? The sweater, like, fills my bag, so it's probably not going to get carried around a lot lately. And since I'm really distracted, then makes life more challenging. The final thing I'm working on, which I guess I stopped in the middle of a row awkwardly, I guess I can finish working on the row on the show, since, who knows. Well, what is it? It might end up being sort of a long show if I decide to demo. Whatever. So I am working on the Baby Surprise Jacket, which is an Elizabeth Zimmerman pattern. I am knitting it out of Wool Mice Lace held doubled in, I think it is the M. Colton Polar Dark. So I made my strand wanderer with this yarn, and I had tons of leftovers. So I decided to, decided to make the cute little baby sweater. Based on the gauge I'm getting and the yarn I'm using, this will be an infant size, and depending on how everything goes, then I will go ahead and also knit a 1-year-old size. I'm thinking out of sock scraps. And that will be, aside from maybe some more hats, the end of the future niece knitting craze. Because, whatever, I feel like I feel that the selfishness coming on. So as much fun as it is to knit itty-bitty baby things, I would like to move on soon to non-itty-bitty baby things. So this is, or what is it? So I am going along in this pattern. This particular yarn probably isn't going to highlight the construction as much, but I think the one with sock scraps definitely will, because it is a really cute little construction. And I'll have to take a picture of the vague blob before I end up seaming it up, and then take a picture of it all prettified. I think, oops, blowing by the decrease, which wouldn't be a very good idea. So I think what I'm going to do is, instead of putting buttonholes, I'm going to put a zipper in, and I'll send it to my mom, and she'll put in the zipper, because I don't actually have a sewing machine. I'll have to talk to her about that and figure out what's what. But apparently when we were, when me and my sisters and brother and stuff were babies, she ended up receiving a zip-up sweater, and she absolutely loved it. So she's like, "You're making a zip-up sweater, right?" So I think the short answer being that the babies can be more contained and are a little bit less grumpy if they have the little zipper in. So that's my game plan right now, but you don't put the buttonholes in until the very end, so I'll probably have a chance to talk with her and figure out what's what, because, my mom is, more for sewing than she is for knitting, so I'm hoping she'll be able to help me out. It'll be a group project. And I absolutely love, I absolutely love the yarn, I absolutely love the colorway, so it's been fun so far to knit. I'm not sure how much if I'm going to have enough to actually make anything useful out of this skein after I make this sweater, because the last thing I knit needed to take at least half a skein of wool mice lace, so I did have a pretty decent amount of wool mice lace, but whatever. Alright, so, oh, isn't that gorgeous? I think it's capturing it fairly decently, but you can definitely see whatever the interesting girder shape I'm making. But I'm really happy with the yarn and how it's pooling, and I think it's going to be super duper cute. But I still have a long way to go still. Fairly recently I finished the first, strange instruction. And now I am continuing on with basically this line of decreases going on around here, and then at some point I guess you put things together, and this is a little sleeve or something. Something or other, but it is making for a very dense, good fabric. I'm probably a little bit big on gauge, and I don't think that's a problem. So it might turn out that this actually comes out to be an in-between size, which is perfectly good, because I'd rather have it be a little bit big than way too freaking small. I do really love working with this stuff, so that is the story there. This is the beginnings of the baby surprise jacket. And it's been fun so far. And it's just so pretty. So hopefully the cool pooling continues, and maybe that's also highlighting the construction of it as well. And that's everything for knitting. So I've been a little bit obsessed with spinning this week. And I mentioned this mostly because, on Monday I ended up getting my wool combs, so I just have a demented number of bags on me right now. So, oh, so pretty, the wool mice lace. Okay, we'll stuff that there. This one. Okay. Alright, the rest of this craziness is related to that. Well, first let me show you my finished thing. I ended up starting and finishing the chocolate Shetland fleece. I might have left this inside on the wheel because I think I was maybe like one row log in last week, but I finished it. I haven't washed it yet. It probably does need a good wash. But I have to figure out why my sink ends up draining early. And both of the sinks upstairs seem to do that, which is pretty annoying. But this is skein number 15. It is 88 yards and a smidge more than 2 ounces, so coming in right on target for what I was hoping for the sweater. There was all sorts of crud in this. But yeah, such is life. It still ended up coming in above 2 ounces, so that was good. It continues on. This doesn't really count for anything aside from whatever my eventual mulled cider. Oh, that's what I forgot to mention. So at some point, when I finish spinning this stupid fleece, I'll be starting the mulled cider cardigan, or the mulled cider jacket. I believe it is a jacket. Out of my chocolate Shetland fleece. And I have one more skein to make before, before I'm effectively out of fleece. I guess I could pick through some, I could pick through some more of it, but whatever. So, at that point I will have everything spun, and what is it? The cal is the Winter is Coming cal. So feel free to post in the Deep Blue Renegade podcast group with sweaters you're working on. What is it? I would say, what is it? I must be a little bit sweater crazy, so I'm spinning for a sweater. I have 2 sweaters on the needle, so one for me and one for a baby. Feel free to hop in and comment on stuff and post pictures. I need to post pictures. I'm a terrible picture poster. Like, considering how easy it is to post pictures, like, maybe it is hard for me to take pictures in the daylight, and that's why I never post pictures, but I do probably owe a picture for this week's progress on the alfalfa sweater, and probably a picture for the baby surprise as well, since it's so gorgeous. But, what is it? So I have one more to go. But, here is the last of the fleece that I'm going to card. Bring up the knees a little bit. But I haven't carded it yet. It's on the to-do list. But that is the last. And what is it? Let's do a quick calculation and see if I'm in the ballpark or not. So, calculator, 80 times 16. Okay, so that would be, roughly speaking, guesstimate-wise, it should be 1,280 yards of sweater yarn. And if that isn't enough, then there are other levels of existence, I'm sure. Okay. And what is it? What will be started soon but hasn't yet started. I ended up pulling this with me to bring to midnight and then left in my car because it was raining cats and dogs. But this is the remainder of the Hello yarn in the pigment colorway, and these are all of the purples. And I'm going to be doing the singles on my Jenkins Lark. Yes, this is the Lark. I don't have any other Jenkins spindles, so I don't know what I'm talking about, but this is slightly more than the yellow, but I have it all balled up and split up and that sort of thing, so it should be going on soon. I guess I've just been a little bit distracted this week with the combs. Okie doke. So, I ended up getting a set of combs from the Woolery. So these are the combs. They are insane. And what is it? I probably need to like go through and carefully bend everything back into position again, because what's been really hard on them is I've been doing a little bit of the chocolate Shetland fleece with them. and what is it? They have that ended up pulling and tugging on things a lot more than I would have preferred, but they're insanely sharp. Like, can you see how sharpened they are? Oh my gosh. So I got these from the Lorry. They're Viking style combs, and they have 2 sets of tines. And I have been combing like a madwoman to try to figure out how to use them. So what they ended up sending me was combs, 16 ounces of scoured Shetland. So this is the 8-ounce bag. And what is it? So it has a little bit of veggie matter, a little bit of stuff like that, but not too crazy. Apparently it's from New Zealand. What is it? So, some lock structure, pretty diffuse and beat up, all things considered. And then they also had this video, which was, what is it? Combing Fiber by Robin. So it was pretty hilarious watching this, because at some point, at some point during the video, she was like talking about safety, and she's like, so I learned this the hard way. Make sure your tetanus shot is up to date, and that you have like your ointment and your Band-Aid and your disinfectant to the ready. But she was like really ominous about something bad happening, but never explained what had happened exactly. So I hope she hadn't gotten lockjaw or something. But she had a lot of different demonstrations and used a lot of different types of fleece. What is it? So long wool, short wool, alpaca, kiviot, churro, what is it? Viking combs, English combs, St. Blaise combs, and what is it? All sorts of things. So I would say, what is it? The only thing that's got me puzzled right now about it is that I seem to not be able to trap some of the little noils behind my combs as effectively as I was hoping. So I don't know if this is because the combs I ended up getting were too widely spaced for the type of fleece I was working with. That's the only thing that I can think of. Or maybe I'm doing something wrong. The other thing, which I haven't yet implemented but will be able to soon, is make what's something which called, what is it? I'm trying to remember. So effectively, you have to re-grease your fleece before you start combing it, and that helps keep down the static. So I'm trying to remember. Oh yes, it's called combing milk, and it's a mixture of rubbing alcohol, olive oil, water, and lecithin. So I finally bought the lecithin at the grocery store. So, though I might also need to, what is it? Though I might also need to, get some more olive oil because I'm running low anyways. So, but what I have here in this baggie is what I have left of the white Shetland. So I probably have like 4 ounces, I'd say. What I have in this bag are all of the little bird's nests I've made so far. So this one seems to have wanted to come out a little bit, but this is a little bird's nest. It ended up getting wound up, and this is top. But what's crazy making, at least to me, is that I do have these little guys still in it, which I'm pretty sure isn't supposed to be the case. So I don't know if it's because I wasn't using the combing milk and re-greasing my fleece before going at it, because I was a little impatient. I don't know. But I have quite the bag of balls. So this is the original thing. And then what I have here, which seems to be taking up a tremendous amount of volume, is the combing waste. So this is effectively the little bit of stuff that comes off of the combs as I'm doing it, so it has lots of short stuff and things that wouldn't really come off and whatever else and whatever the hell was on my floor. But it ends up basically being a little unit that is the size of the comb. And I'm not sure whether or not I'm going to do anything more with this. The suggestion was actually to comb some of that, or sorry, not to comb, but to card some of the extras. But, yeah, we will see. But the other thing that I've been doing with it is, and you'll find this to be pretty hilarious, so what I have in this bag is the Shetland that I've combed so far. So this is the chocolate Shetland fleece, and this is the stuff that, oh dear God, I didn't want to touch at all with my cards, because it was going to be a dreadful hot mess. So, this is, in my hands, about 0.6 ounces. This is all of the combing waste. This is about 0.9 ounces. And you can see this is sort of the unit of comb. And that's sort of how the combing waste goes. Honestly, and what is it? And this over here is what I've been combing off of, which is the short stuff, which I didn't really want to card at all. So it's pretty awful as far as, like, what is it? It's pretty terrifying, all things considered. But oh my gosh, the top that I'm making from the Shetland is amazing. Even though it is like pretty, what is it? It's a lot of short stuff, but there was some long stuff in there too. So I figured with the combs, I could separate the short and long effectively. And I think that that's definitely the case. So I think I'll be able to salvage some, but definitely not all, of, what is it, that stuff. Actually, yeah. Better than nothing else. Because I was planning on just tossing it all, so I figured it was a good chance to practice with the combs and figure out how in the world I was going to get everything nice and separated. And it really does comb quite beautifully. Like, once as you're going through and, making it, then it just flies. So, in true excited Molly fashion, it looks like, oh, wait, there's one more thing I want to talk about. So then, what is it? With my little balls of top, as I've been going through and making the second pass, I have been spinning, basically so what is it? Be the case where as I'm pulling the top off the combs, then what I do is I end up effectively having a second pass where I take whatever's left over, recomb it to get all of the neps on the wrong side of the combs, and then pull that off. And then I've been spinning that pretty much immediately. Let's see if I can get it in frame. Maybe. Close enough. So, oh, that doesn't really want to go. So, there we go. So, this is what I've been spinning so far. It's spinning up like a dream. I'm really super duper excited that I got combs, because I really do love spinning worsted. But, man, it's turning out beautifully. So I wouldn't have guessed from the fleece that it would end up being so, like, white and fluffy and lovely, but that's certainly been the case. So I'm probably going to actually combine it all into a single project. And I still haven't, for example, weighed the delta between my waist and my actual good top. Because it should be, what is it? On the high end, it should be like 50%. And I'm hoping that isn't the case and that this stuff is just really diffuse, for lack of a better word, but I'm not sure. But I wanted to give a quick demo of combing for you guys on the podcast, since whatever, I find it to be interesting. Do you find it to be interesting? So what I've done is I've grabbed my pile of Shetland, and effectively I'm just taking a big bite of it, and then I am going to be putting it onto the comb. So I try to, in this case, because it is so jumbled up, I'm not trying to put it in lock formation, I'm just grabbing some and going. So, and I'm probably not going to put this whole glomp on here. And I'm just trying to keep my hands away from the points, because they like sharpen these. They weren't messing around. Okay, so that's about half full, so that's good. It's going to fluff up quite a bit as I go. So it's a case where I don't really have very much hanging out. Sorry, I don't have very much hanging out over here. Everything is for the most part between the two tines. And then it's pretty thoroughly on there as well. This bit can probably go on too. And then what I'm going to do is, so this guy here will be my stationary comb. And then this one here will be my moving comb. So these are hand combs. You can also get attachments to bolt it to the table if you feel like, but I figured it would be fine. And then what you do is you're going outward. And you start from the tips, a lot like carding, and then work your way in, slowly but surely. So what I'm doing is I'm starting from the tips, and since I sort of glomp this on here, it probably means I'm going to be pulling off some big chunks, at least initially, and that's fine. It looks a little bit crazy, but it isn't the end of the world. And effectively I'm just sort of pulling off the stuff which wasn't very well attached. But I don't need, like, it's sort of also, a lot of the tips for carding apply here, so you don't really want to be working too hard, so you don't want to be going so deep in that you have a hard time pulling your comb out. And as you slowly work through it, then you end up getting closer and closer to the tines on the other end. And you can see already that this is actually looking quite fluffy and whatever else. I'm assuming everything is pretty clean. And so what is it? The nice thing is that there was a little bit of veggie matter in this fleece, but that didn't end up being a big deal, because when you're combing, the veggie matter honestly just falls out. It's really pretty cool. It was always your hope while carding that the veggie matter would fall out, and I generally have quite the pile around me when carding. But this, like, it just falls right out. So that's really awesome. So now you can see that I mostly have transferred everything to the other side. And now I'm like, can skim the metal of the comb on the other side. And generally once I get to the metal on this side, then I take my stationary comb and I flip it upside down. And then I go the other direction. And what I'm waiting for is, when I'm going through and doing this motion, I'm waiting for the point at which I'm not really pulling anything anymore. So every pass that I'm doing is not gathering any more fiber. And at this point, like, I'm not really gathering fiber anymore, so sometimes I push it up a little bit to see if I can grab a little bit more. And it looks like that's done. So on this side, my stationary side, I have this little bit of waste. So I'm going to pull it up, take it off the comb, and then put it in my little waste pile. Where did my little waste pile? Oh, there it is. Okay. So now this is like ridiculously more fluffy, right? And whatever, there's some chunks that I end up pulling off as I go. because they're gross and strange. So now what I'm going to do is stationary comb is still stationary, and now I'm going to transfer the stuff to this side onto the stationary. Now, since based on the way that I ended up putting the fleece on, what is it? I'm not necessarily preserving the directionality of the lock, but the reason why you do it in even steps is that if you were preserving the direction of the lock, then, what is it? Then you want to always finish combing, oops, too far. You always want to finish combing on the stationary one, because that is the butt end, so to speak. So you're sort of transferring it back and forth, butt end to tip end, and so the moving one has the tip end, and the fixed one has the butt. And then when you're pulling it off, you want to spin from the tips, so to speak. So you want to sort of know where you left off, which is why you do it in pairs of moving to stationary. And then if you need to do more rounds, continue doing moving to stationary. I sort of like working from the stationary a little bit more, or transferring to the stationary a little bit more than I like moving for some reason. And so it's the case where as I'm going, I end up getting this great big puffy cloud. And I think based on how it ends up catching anyways, for the most part it's probably mostly the butt end that I'm getting from, or basically the cut end of the fleece. So, and whatever, I try to push the fiber towards the bottom of the comb a little bit as I'm going along. So, and then as I'm going through in this round, I'm trying to make sure that I'm catching and combing anything that hadn't been caught the first time around. So that everything is nice and fluffy and opened up instead of just some. And it should be the case where any moils that are created end up getting caught behind. And especially if there's like a short thing, I find it pretty easy to actually just blow it off like that. So, so I'm now reaching the part where you can sort of see here how there's all this crud that I don't necessarily want to transfer over. But first, I'm going to switch that back a little bit. We're going to change directions, go tines down again, to capture stuff from the other direction, because it ends up smoothing everything out in the other direction, and sometimes you can grab a little bit more of the nice long stuff if you switch it out. But I always feel like I can get a little bit closer in when I'm doing this from the stationary side, so. Alright. One more round this way. And we'll call it good. So, this is the waist. So, you can definitely see maybe a little bit more bally stuff in here, but definitely more than the first round. And there is the little comb-shaped unit of crud into the waistband. So now I'm going to do another round, because there's still quite a bit in here that isn't really combed yet, especially on the bottom. So what I'm going to do is still work from the tips out and try to get this stuff diffused out. So I want all of it, to be opened up. And the only way that I can really make that happen is very carefully starting from the tips and going out. But a lot of this is really nice and good to go right now. After, effectively one round of combing. Based on the fact that I didn't manage to catch very much, I ended up directly transferring most of the stuff from the first round. I'll probably end up needing to do a third round of this. But, like, I want everything to be open and caught and that sort of thing. But it gets easier and easier to do as you open things up, which is nice. And at this point, what is it? I've probably done it at least, what is it? I've had a decent amount of practice this week with trying to get it to go and that sort of thing. The one thing I'm missing at this point is to actually have a way to take fiber off of the combs. So what I've been doing so far is using my hands to do it, but what I would like to do is probably sometime soon make something called a diz. So a diz is a concave, sturdy little thing with some holes drilled into it, and then you can select how big of a sliver you make by, what is it? By selecting the hole diameter. Oops, again, grabbing some of the other, going by. So, going in the other direction, trying to get everything off. So, I think the diz would be helpful in making things smoother and neater and that sort of thing. I don't think it'll change. In fact, I'm still getting noils in the main body of my fiber, but such is life. So, what is it? So that's a tool which didn't necessarily come with the little woolery kit. Which would have been nice, but whatever. Switch this down a little bit. So trying to get this to come off because it seems like it's not being very productive. There we go. Look. Okay. So on one hand, it seems like this should come off, but on the other hand, it's not really going. So I think, yeah, it's not really coming up anymore. So this ends up going to the waste pile, so you can definitely see some of the little fiber balls in there. So, continuing with round 2, is it end up doing the transfer from the moving back to the stationary again. So, as I go, it gets easier and easier to do as things open up and that sort of thing. For some reason, it's being really big right now, though. So I'll try to push it closer to the bottom. So I don't think I put too much on here for. Okay, yep, and there's the big chunk of uncombed fleece I have caught on here. So hopefully I can get that in the next round. Get everything sorted out. So there's a certain, whatever, repetitiveness to combing, but such is life. haven't even gone to the really magical part, which is pulling it off. So, alright. Flip. Again. Whatever, I'm just waiting for that feeling that I'm not really transferring anything anymore, just pushing against the metal. My waist. And let's see if I can finally catch the last little uncombed bits this time. So I'm sort of going around the cloud, so to speak. Whenever I see something small, I try to make sure I catch my comb around it instead of getting it on the front of the comb. And every little bit that I'm doing is opening it up further and making for a giant fluff cloud. Trying to go nice and slow on parts that haven't been caught yet. And this is causing everything to point towards you guys. Yeah. Okie doke. But what I'm trying to catch is right in there, which doesn't seem to, well, which it seems to have had whatever missed out on most of the combing that I've been doing so far. But it looks like I'm finally getting it all in this round, so that's good. Because I want it to be all opened up. Alright. Seems like I've gotten most of it at this point, so that's good. What is it? And whatever, the goal is to get everything opened and aligned and all that other fun stuff, so. For some reason this seems to be taking a little bit longer than planned, but I just like the surprise demos. So the step which I haven't done yet is before you put stuff on the combs, you're supposed to basically drizzle some oil on both sides and work it into the fleece. If the fleece is pretty nice, preserving the lock structure. If it's not so important, then you can just load the card on however you wish. Because the primary thing is making sure that you don't end up having like a static problem. Because you end up generating friction every time you pass by with the comb, so that ends up, whatever, making your fluff ball fluffier and fluffier and fluffier as you go. And this can be a little bit counterproductive if it gets too fluffy. So now I've made it to the times again. I'm doing my last couple of passes to try to get as much of the fleece as possible off of it. But it looks to be that, so pull it off, push off the scraps. And now the final bit, so I just have to transfer it to the other comb for the last time. And this is just to, whatever, you do all these steps evenly. So you have a choice of 2, 4, 6. I don't think in the video that Robin ended up doing it 3 times, but that seems to happen to me a decent amount for some reason. Especially with the chocolate chitlin fleece, but I think that's because everything needed to be opened up really badly, and then once I got everything opened up, then I could really get going with the combs, but until that point, it wasn't very effective. Okay. So, almost there. And I guess I've been trying to keep it in view the entire time, but I might be a little bit low. I tend to keep the camera pretty high, so I guess this isn't too big of a surprise. Almost there. So, rounds this way. Rounds that way. And you can see the crud. Pull it off. Alright, now we are ready to pull off. So I'm going to put my other comb down. So this is super duper fluffy right now. You can still see maybe a little bit of the crimp, or there's no contrast because it's all white. And before you start pulling off, it's sort of compacted down here, so you end up opening it up a little bit while still letting it stay on the tips. And that ends up helping a lot with pulling it off. So now I have pretty much the full length of the comb. And what I'm doing here is gathering it up and sort of getting it to a point. So this is going to pull off based on the length of the fiber I have. So I'm going to be pulling off the longest fiber first. And what I'm doing as I'm pulling it off is pull and let go, pull and let go. And effectively what I should be doing is actually pulling off staple lengths. And how do I know what a staple length is? The staple length should be how far I am to the comb. So that's what I'm doing right now, is basically gathering a chunk and then pulling the staple length off. And I should be pretty much getting the whole thing. So then as I continue pulling, I keep pulling shorter and shorter fibers off as I go. And then effectively sort of reforming every so often so that I can get as much off as possible. Okie doke. I'm just taking some of the, I probably shouldn't be picking out anything as I'm doing this, but such is life. So, what is it? So, going along, pulling off. And now what I started with was maybe 4 inches, and what I have right now is maybe 2. And I'm going to keep gently pulling until I start getting too much from the back of the comb to the front. So I think it's probably a decent stopping point there. So now that I have this big old length of fiber, I'm going to wind it into a bird's nest. So as I'm winding it, I'm adding a little bit of twist to it, which is effectively what makes it sliver. And then that is a little nest, which I'll put with his buddies. Now for this stuff, I can do one more round of combing on it. Effectively what it is the case where I had too many noils on the wrong side of my combs and pulling them through as I was going. So one more round will get me a small one, which I'll end up putting pretty much immediately on my wheel. So this will be a shorter staple section of the fleece. So effectively I'm sort of grading it by length by doing it this way. Because the thing about combing is that you're effectively sorting everything by how long it is. So if you're combining fibers, for example, the only things that will actually combine are the things which are the same length. So that's how you can use combs to like remove guard hairs and stuff like that, because generally guard hairs are much longer than the down. So another round of waste. I guess I should transfer this back to this end. So, and you can see right now how super duper easy it is to transfer now that I have way less of it on here. So, whenever we're doing that working in pairs, so whenever I use the working comb, I have to take everything off the moving comb back onto the stationary. And that's all waste. And now get this fluffed out again, so nice and fluffy. And then I'm gonna pull off the second round. So this will be a lot shorter, so I'm not gonna pull as far on this one. And I'll keep pulling until it's like about half as long as what I started, and then the rest will just be, will just count as waste. So there we go. So that is the final amount of waste, and this is the last little bit, which unfortunately has some crap in it, so there's perhaps some things I need to learn and understand, but it is so like ridiculously fluffy and diffuse, so can't complain about that. So a little bit more left, and pull it off. So there's my little combing demo. And then I can spin directly from the little balls that I end up making, so pretty cool. I guess what I won't be, whatever, showing the Shetland, but I end up bringing whatever the chocolate Shetland, please, because that one's a bit of a pain. It takes a lot longer in order to get everything nice and whatever, basically to get everything opened up, and then it's sort of like you do a couple of rounds after you get everything finally opened up. So, what is it? So with that, I hope you enjoyed the little combing demo and weren't too bored, or you're just, whatever, listening to me. I would like to remind everyone to take part in the Winter is Coming Sweater Cal, which is in the Deep Blue Renegade podcast group on Ravelry. I'd also like to thank anyone who has recently discovered my podcast via YouTube. I've been a YouTube podcaster the entire time, so I'm really super duper excited at the larger exposure now that YouTube is the main place in order to find knitting podcasts. So I really hope you liked what you saw and enjoyed the podcast. Tool demos probably is atypical, but such is life. I should be recording again next week, so that'll be November 8th. So I hope you guys all have a great week, and I look forward to talking to you guys next week. So take care, guys. Bye-bye.